This is probably the first upgrade you want to do to your Yokomo ready-to-run drift car. Welcome to the channel. My name is Troy. This is Roadside RC. You'll tend to find me bashing and crawling and drifting and racing, plus doing product review videos and how-tos. And I'm working on this brand new Yokomo ready-to-run budget entry-level rear-wheel drive drift car. First thing I need to do to it is I need to upgrade the gyro. The factory gyro, unfortunately, did not live a long life before it has actually died now. And so I'm going to see if I can get the trusty Yokomo V4 gyro up and running with the stock controller if possible, and if it works well, this is going to be probably the first upgrade you want to do on this car also. First thing we need to do is get this old gyro out, so we're going to slide in here and pop it off of its double-sided tape. As we remove these plugs, we're going to look a little bit here as to where they go. You actually have a diagram in your kit right here that tells you which one is which. So the first one connects to the channel 1, this is channel 3, and this connects to your servo. With the new gyro here, it actually has its own wiring diagram that says which one of these wires goes to those. We're just going to follow that back together to put them all back in the right order. Just to discreetly say this, I am not planning on using the channel 3 in order to control the gyro gain, because the stock controller does have a channel 3, but per the instructions it's really only in like an on-off button for channel 3. We don't really have a way to set the gain using it, so we have to leave this single wire plug unplugged, and then we will be setting the gain via this little switch right here. I've used some fresh double-sided tape in order to mount the gyro right up here on top of this top ridge. I did that mostly because it's going to be a lot easier for you and I to see what the heck I'm doing as I do this. Also, this is bigger than the factory gyro, so it won't fit in this little hole as much. With the controller powered on up here, we're now going to turn everything on. We're going to make sure this gets power. We're going to make sure everything turns on. I can hear the servo buzzing, and we have some servo movement, but it's a little jerky. I think it's having to figure out what's going on here. We might have an analog versus digital situation going on, so we're going to have to check that out. One of the first things that we need to do is set the endpoints with it. So we're going to hold this button down while we turn everything on. I get flashy lights. Both lights are flashing. I'm going to then turn all the way as far as I want it to go. I'm going to then hit the button again. It flashes, goes solid. Means it's accepted that endpoint. We're going to come here the other direction. Turn as far as we want it to go. It's going to flash again and accepted that. We should be able to come back to the center. And now it should be reinitialized. Well, so I've tested this Yokomo gyro with the stock servo. It does appear that the stock servo and this gyro don't get along. So fortunately, I had a ReveD RS-ST servo already laying around looking for a home. And so I will be getting it out of the box and swapping it over. This is a very straightforward process. All you have to do is turn the wheels one way or the other and take this screw out right here. Plus, underneath the bottom here, there will be 2 screws for mounting the servo itself. Those 2 come out, and the whole thing will be out. At that point, we'll be able to swap over the servo horn onto the new servo, and we'll be in good shape. Now, I'm going to note that it appears when the wheels are straight, the servo horn is straight up and down with the output of the servo to the passenger side of the car. And so we need to make sure to power this up and get that servo installed in the right orientation. I was able to plug the servo into the gyro, into the vehicle, turn on both the controller and the car, make sure that the steering was centered, and then I was able to put the steering horn straight up and down on there. I also transferred over both of the mounting brackets, and now we're going to slide this whole mechanism back into the car and get it all mounted up. with it all plugged back in, fired it back up, it doesn't look like we actually did get the steering centered. So the other thing is steering is reversed. So if I turn the steering wheel to the right, wheels go to the left, wheels go to the right. So that is not what we want. However, the other thing you gotta check is on the gyro itself. So if I move the rear of the car this way, the front wheels should turn with it. And that does work. So the gyro is in the correct orientation, but the steering servo is not. So we need to break out this manual and get back into how are we going to do the trim and how are we going to reverse the steering channel. Fortunately, that is all right here in this manual. The first part is reversing the steering. So what the manual says is to hold this button down, turn on the transmitter, we should hear a couple of beeps, and then the steering should be reversed. All right, now if we power this on, good, now we're in left is left, right is right, so that is a good thing. But again, you can tell we are still way off from center line. So we can do this a couple different ways. What I'm probably going to do, because of how far we're off, is I'm going to actually move the servo horn and recenter it to the whole vehicle instead of just doing it with trim. You kind of always want to keep the trim on these as close to 0 if you can. Going through the endpoint adjustments again on both the gyro and the controller now gets it to where I have much better control both directions, everything is much smoother, and we have full gyro activity. So it is now time to actually drive this car and see what it really feels like. All right, car has been driven, new gyro, new servo installed. It really makes a world of difference in how this car drives. You know, I actually really didn't mind the feel of the stock gyro. If I could just have turned the gain down without it absolutely frying itself, I probably would have still been trying to run it at this point. But it is really good to know that you could get the DP-302 gyro with the ReveD servo and still be using your stock controller. So that means it's a lot easier to get this setup installed here on a much more budget-friendly option compared to having to do all that and a controller at the same time. Yes, you will probably want to eventually upgrade the controller also, but that's something that we can do later down the line. So I hope this video was useful for you. I have a lot more drift content that I've done over the years. All sorts of things from how to set up gyros, other car setup and tuning tips, and I'm going to leave a link to that playlist right over here. So if you're still curious about any of that kind of stuff, jump into that playlist and find the video that's right for you. So thank you, and we will talk to you in the next video. Goodbye.